following is a Comfortably Zoned Radio Network production.
Thank you, Tally Olson. We are back talking sports in the zone. I've got four mavens. George Case III. How are you, George? Al Blumkin is here.
Hello there, everybody.
Hal Bock is here.
Yes, I am. Hi, everyone.
And our leader for the evening is here, David Hubler.
Hello,
Take us on
hello.
a great show, David.
Well, last week, if you recall, we talked a lot about the noise at ballparks and how it was, for us old-timers, it was getting to be a bit much, and the thought of just even going to some of these games in person was becoming a bit of a chore. And so I thought on the mild side, we could talk about, this is the last full week of the Major League Baseball season, and the playoffs will begin shortly thereafter. So I thought we could just talk around the old Cracker Barrel, as they used to say, about the chances of the various teams that are already in, and there's a couple that still haven't crossed the finish line yet. So, Hal, why don't you start, bring us up to date on where we stand with the playoff rosters?
Well, the big thing in the American League is home field advantage. The divisions pretty much have been decided. The Yankees are winners of the American League East, and the Houston Astros are the winners in the West, and the Central Division belongs to the Minnesota Twins. Now, the big thing here in New York is whether the Yankees can get home field advantage, because they're looking ahead past the first round to the ALCS, where they would play probably the Houston Astros. And the thing that worries them is, in addition to the Astros having a 1-2-3 punch at pitching-wise with Verlander, who's probably going to win the Cy Young, and Garrett Cole and Greinke, that's a major task to start with, and the Yankees would have trouble matching them in terms of starting pitching. So they'd really like to have the home field advantage, so if they get to a Game 6 and Game 7, they'd play in Yankee Stadium. Going into today's action, I think the Yankees were half a game behind Houston, and that'll be decided this week. That's about the only thing in the American League, except for the wild card, the second wild card. It looks like Oakland will have the first one, and the Cleveland Indians and the Tampa Bay Rays are in a dogfight for that second wild card. In the National League, the Mets are on life support. They're probably going to be eliminated tonight or tomorrow. After making a really good run at the second wild card, they were in a terrible hole at the halfway point in the season, and they rallied thanks to Allen's Pittsburgh Pirates. I want to personally thank you, Alan, for the great job you did with the Milwaukee Brewers this week, helping us catch up.
Well, the Pirates have lost 9 in a row. 2 weeks ago, weekends ago, they gave up 47 runs to the Cubs in 3 games. And this past weekend, they were outscored by Milwaukee 24-5.
That wasn't too good.
No, they've been horrible second half. They're playing about 300 ball in the second half of the season.
So the National League, the favorites would have to be the Dodgers and the Braves. And somebody was saying today, even though the Dodgers have been in the World Series the last couple of years, the Braves are a really good team, and they could knock them off. So it remains to be seen. We'll be finding all of this out in another week or so. But that's the exciting part of the year. The most exciting part of the year is the postseason, and that's where we stand in terms of wild card, in terms of home field advantage, and so forth.
Hal, you forgot to mention the Cardinals, who are very close to having the NL Central wrapped up.
Right,
they beat the Cubs.
They'll be there.
They beat the Cubs 4 games over the weekend.
In Wrigley
They beat
Field.
them by 1 run in each game in Wrigley Field. And they posted that this was the first time this happened between the Cardinals and the Cubs since 1921. I didn't know that. They posted that up
quick pitch.
The guy on the Cardinals who really amazes me is their catcher, Molina.
Oh, he's great.
I mean, what a great player he is. And he's been doing it for an awfully long time.
Yeah.
So he's headed for the Hall of Fame as far as I'm concerned. Although
I agree with you totally. Yeah.
But he's a special player. He really is. So it's going to be exciting. Postseason baseball always has exciting moments and memorable moments, and we look forward to it.
So you think we've reached the acme of postseason breakdowns? In other words, we're not going to add another couple of wild cards to keep more teams in.
You don't want to get me started on that subject. You really don't.
Okay.
Because George knows where I come from in terms of changing the rules in baseball, changing the setups in baseball.
Well, I feel the same way.
Yep, and I do too, Hal and David and Alan. I'm with you guys 100%.
I have a friend who, Tom Zacco, who really hates the wild cards. He's a big Dodger fan, and he said he wouldn't even root for them if they got in through a wild card.
The wild card, the problem, one of the problems that I have with the wild card is you play 162 games, and then you're in a shotgun situation, one and out. Play one more game, and you either win or you go home, and that's terrible. At least if you're going to have a wild card, 2 wild cards, make it 2 out of 3. Give both teams an even shot. But to have a one game, almost it's sudden death, really. I can't. The reason they did it is to add games, to add income for management, and what it does do, I will say this: it produces some excitement for teams that otherwise would not have anything to play for in September. And the Mets are a great example. I mean, they never got closer than 3 games behind the Cubs for that second wild card. But they really had the fans excited here in New York because they came from nowhere. They were 11 games under right after the All-Star game. That's a lost season, But they were fortunate enough to have a stretch of about 20 games in which they played Allen's Pittsburgh Pirates 19 times, I think. And they just kept beating them up. And they won all these games, and suddenly they were in a race. And that was exciting for New York. For a baseball purist like me, it's not exciting because as I told my nephew, I said, this is fake gold. This is don't swallow the Kool-Aid. This is not real, And unfortunately, a lot of people do swallow the Kool-Aid, and they got excited about it. And I suppose that's a good thing for them, for the fans, but it's just a phony arrangement to have 2 teams in wild card games with one of them going home if they lose.
Hey, can I, Hal? And now that you're talking about it, and I'm going to, show my ignorance because I'm a traditionalist. I don't understand all these games. How is the wild card determined? Is it based upon season record? Is it based upon
season record? Best percentage. George, base is determined by a percentage if the team isn't winning the division.
Right.
In other words, the best records of teams
that don't win their
division.
Okay.
Now, if Cleveland and Tampa Bay wind up tied for the second wild card, they'll have a playoff for that.
They'll have a playoff to get the second wild card game.
Yeah.
Will provide them with a one-game playoff in the postseason.
Exactly.
It won't be.
Right.
Well,
well, thank you for clearing that up, guys, because, I don't follow it the way I used to as a kid, but, it's always mystified me a little bit because I've never liked a wild card to begin with, but I understand it. I just didn't know how it was determined, how that was based upon a
when
percentage
we were growing
or
up,
whatever.
When I was growing up and I fell in love with baseball, there were 2 leagues and each league had 8 teams.
Right.
And each league had a team would finish first, usually the Yankees in the American League, which frustrated me greatly, but that's another matter. And each of those first-place teams would advance to the World Series, and then we would have a best-of-7 World Series. And that made an awful lot of sense to me. And I understand expansion and adding new markets and all of this stuff. And they reached a point where they came to 4 divisions, 2 divisions in each league. And each of those divisions had a first-place team. And I was okay with that because they played off. They had, I think, a best of 7 in the playoffs.
There's 5 for a number of years. Yeah.
And now, I mean, you've got how many teams? It's almost like the NBA, you know, with all these teams getting in. I don't like it. I just don't like it. I'm sorry.
Hal, I got a question, and David, I wanted to ask you. We talked last week, and I said, you know, I was very partial to, you know, baseball in Washington, that kind of. I'm just curious. The Nationals, at one point, you know, a couple of years ago, everybody was high on them, and it looked like they were going to do all kinds of great things. You know, this year they almost fell flat. So I'm curious as to what the fan base and what the press in Washington talks about the Nationals this year. What's going on with that ball club?
Well, there's bitter regrets over the way the team started out, because they started out very, very poorly. And now they're still in it. In fact, they won this afternoon. They beat Philadelphia this afternoon, and it's a day-night doubleheader. And if they win today, they knock Philadelphia out of the playoffs altogether. So, which is a bit of a surprise, because once the Phillies got Bryce Harper, you know, it was that's it, National League East. Philadelphia's got it locked up. Well, apparently they haven't gotten it locked up, because it looks. I don't know what the score is. I haven't turned on the game tonight, but they did win this afternoon quite handily. For the most part, the fan base is still there, and it is growing incrementally. They do draw a very good crowd. Of course, this afternoon's game was not indicative of that kind of crowd tension, because it was a part of a makeup, and it was a work day, and so there may be 20,000 people there. But they do draw well. The interesting thing about the Nationals, when they built that stadium, it was, you know, right off in the middle of Podunk, part of D.C., and now the most amazing condo buildings have come up all around the place with restaurants and things. So even if they don't really win the World Series, if they get into it this year, they're attracting a new, fairly young fan base. Of course, the old codgers like myself still like to come out and see a ball game, and it's just been good. Boswell, Tom Boswell in the Post had a very interesting article yesterday, was it today? Anyway, about the team and its chances. And he's of the opinion that, you know, that they're really positioning themselves for a good run next year, simply because they were able to overcome a terrible start. I think they were 12-30 or something like that, and only 2 other teams, they pointed out on TV today that only 2 other teams had started out that poorly and made it into the playoffs. This starts like with 69 when they first started having a playoff thing. Anyway, I do believe they have the nucleus of a really outstanding team. And it all depends on what they do with Rendon and a couple of other guys that are up for the contract renewal. But yeah, the team. The trouble with it, this is still a Redskin town, and the Redskin season started, and they're 0-3, and people are still going out to see that crummy team. And when they've got a much better baseball team in town, which is in town, as opposed to running out to suburban Maryland to see a crummy football team. I don't understand it, but that's the way it is. Once the football season is over and the Redskins are eliminated, the baseball season will be long over, so you can't, pull in that kind of crowd until next spring. But I'm very optimistic about the team has been put together with very good management and leadership, and there's lots of money there.
David, let me ask you this. being in Philadelphia, obviously with Bryce Harper coming with his huge contract, was the slow start, in your opinion, or the opinion of fans or the press in Washington, because the hole that was left when Harper, went to greener pastures?
No, I don't think so. I mean, Harper was a dynamic. I always liked Harper. I mean, I just loved when he hit those left-hand home runs out of the ballpark. But no, they quickly rallied around Anthony Rendon, who I think is a better all-around ball player. The guy's great third baseman. He's got about 35 home runs, I think now, something like that. He could be in the running for. Well, here he is, of course, in D.C. Running for the MVP. But look, they have Michael A. Taylor, who is a terrific defensive outfielder. His hitting has fallen off. He didn't even make the team. I mean, he's in the minor leagues, he's AAA, but last year he was up all the time. So they've got three really solid outfielders without even Michael A. Taylor, who didn't even make it up onto the major league roster until September. So I don't think they lost all that much in losing Harper. I really don't.
Okay. Well, I was really curious, David, because being up here in Philly, in the Philly area, I don't really follow the Nationals the way, I used to with Washington baseball. But, down here, I say down here, but in the Philadelphia area, I mean, there was such big news when Harper came on board. The Phillies are all of a sudden they're going to be a lock for the World Series,
right,
and blah, blah, blah. Well, that didn't happen either. So I'm just curious as to, the reaction in Washington.
Well, what's the reaction or the impact did Harper make this year? Philly's a tough town. Sports writers are tough. What's the feeling in Philadelphia about Harper? Did he make his money this year or not?
Well, I think, he started off horribly too. I mean, he's come along, but I mean, as a purist, the way I am looking back at the baseball the way it used to be when you're offering that kind of money, if I were Harper, I'd say, hey, God bless you, I'll take it as much as you want to give me.
Yeah.
But, it put a lot of pressure on him, obviously, as a person and as a ball player, because he now was expected to perform. And those first couple of weeks, I mean, he was striking out, left and right. And, of course, everybody expected him every time he got to the plate, he was going to put one into the seats, but that didn't happen. But on the other hand, the Philly fans and the press, they rallied around him. They didn't boo him off the field the way they have with many players. And, he's done a pretty good job. So he'll be there for quite a while, and Philadelphia is building too, and they've got that rivalry, and Washington. I didn't realize they were playing a day-night doubleheader today.
Yeah.
I guess the second game is what? One of them was a makeup, so there's separate admissions, I think.
Right. Yes, they are. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Right. Okay.
I watched some of the game this afternoon. It was on MLB, and they were flashing the averages, and Harper was one time I saw him, the average that he was carrying was 258. His power numbers were decent, but the batting average wasn't so good. And one thing, this game wound up 4-1, and 9 innings, and you can't believe look at the box score tomorrow. You can't believe the number of pitchers each team used. It was insane. I had to turn it off.
New age baseball.
Yeah,
that's it.
That's
incredible.
Alan, how long was that game? Was there anything about that?
No, it wasn't exceedingly long because most of these pitchers were brought in to start an inning.
Right.
Yeah, but the starter went long. 4 innings, and then a different pitcher every inning. And if a pitcher
that's going to change next year, because relief pitchers are going to have to face 3 batters.
Yeah, if a pitcher gets in trouble, I
don't know that that's a good thing.
If a pitcher gets in trouble, they have no experience in pitching out of it.
But this business about facing 3 batters, I don't know if that's a good thing because that affects the strategy of the game. which I don't like them to do. I like them to leave the strategy of the game to the managers. And if I bring in a pitcher to face a left-handed hitter, for example, like Bryce Harper, and he either gets him out or he doesn't, that pitcher has to stay in for two more batters. Now, what if the next batter is a right-handed batter and the one after him is a right-handed batter? You know, it impacts the strategy of the game. Now, I know they're trying to speed the game up. They don't want all these pitching changes. But I understand where the pitching changes came from, and I understand the strategy involved. And I don't necessarily oppose me bringing in a left-hander to face your left-handed hitter and then me bringing in a right-hander to face the next batter who's a right-handed hitter. I'm not necessarily against that, but they play it out to the point where, as Alan pointed out, they have, what do they have, like 18 pitchers today, you know? It's crazy. It's goofy.
There was a game last night, the meaningless game between the Blue Jays and the Orioles that went, that the Toronto won 11-10, and I counted the pitchers up in the box score, 18 pitchers. Not for each side.
Part of that, of course, is that they're trying to get a look at some of these guys who've been in the minors all year.
Yes, that's right.
And that's going to change too next year, so you won't see that so much because you won't be allowed to bring up, as many.
By the way, when they started the ALCS and the NLCS, it was 5 games until 1985, and then they made it 7 in 1985.
Well, it should be at least 5 games.
The 5 games.
5 games at least gives you an opportunity.
Yeah.
If you happen to make an error at a crucial time and cost your team a game, to come back the next day and maybe hit a home run, So, I mean, the one game, 1 and out, is just goofy. It doesn't make any sense to me. If you play 162 games and then you can be eliminated in a sudden death situation, I don't like that at all.
Well, the Pirates had 2 years in a row. They ran into Blumkin the first year in 2014 and to Arrieta the game in 2015. And both those pitches were very hot. The Pirates didn't score in either game. Also, another thing,
they were in the playoffs, Alan?
Yeah, as recently as 4 years ago.
Oh, my God. How did they get so bad so fast?
Very bad management.
I guess, yeah.
And another thing is if the Yankees and the Astros wind up tied, the Houston gets the edge because they won the season series.
Mm-hmm.
The Yankees, in order to get the home field, have to finish 1 game ahead of the Astros.
Well, they have the opportunity. They're playing Texas and they're playing Tampa.
Tampa Bay tonight, yeah.
For, obviously. I mean, for my part, they can play in Newark. Although David will be offended by that, but I can't help it.
Oh, I'm sorry. It's okay.
Thank you, Dave. Appreciate that.
Yankee Stadium sells out most of the time.
They sell out with I had my neighbors went to Yankee Stadium the other day, and my neighbor calls me up and she said, "I was in the Yankee Museum. What a wonderful place that is." And I thought to myself, this self-aggrandizement, I mean, it just doesn't work for me.
Wow, you don't have that history. You don't have that history.
I mean, I think I told you guys. Hey, I think I told you guys when I went to Yankee Stadium a couple of years ago. I went to the Yankees Museum, and the young tour guide is showing the picture of Lou Gehrig, and all the players lined up, and for the luckiest man. And I happened to say to the guide, I said, "Excuse me, do you know who those players are?" "Oh, no, I don't." I thought to myself, my God, you're supposed to be, Yankee history. You're doing a guided tour of this museum, and you don't even know who the players in the photograph are of one of baseball's most iconic moments.
Yep, you're right. I believe you're right. That happens an awful lot.
Because the guide was probably 19 years old and didn't know who Lou Gehrig was.
Right.
Hal, absolutely right. I mean, he probably knew Lou Gehrig because it said on the bottom Lou Gehrig on the photograph. But he was a young kid, and my cousin's with me, and she pulled me aside. Says, "You should be a tour guide here." I said, "Well, you know what? I don't mean to make a scene, but to me, you know, you better get schooled in the history of this place because everything didn't happen just yesterday. It happened many, many years ago, and the heritage and the fact that Yankee Stadium with the great players and all that have come through there for so many years, the new Yankee Stadium, and I tell people all the time, in my opinion, the new Yankee Stadium is not the house that Ruth built. Same name,
not.
but totally different atmosphere. I just don't like it. Period.
In my opinion, the old Yankee Stadium was a shrine. This is just another ballpark.
Right. I'm with you, Alan.
Well, I covered games in the old Yankee Stadium, and I remember being very impressed by the fact that I was in this ballpark where Babe Ruth and Lou Gehrig played. And they didn't play in the new Yankee Stadium.
No,
they sure didn't.
So I mean,
they didn't play there. Mantle didn't play there. Barrett didn't play there. I mean,
DiMaggio.
I call it, DiMaggio. I mean, I call it the house that George built, not the house that Babe Ruth built. I mean, it was built on the site. It's called Yankee Stadium, but it is not the original Yankee Stadium with all the history. And that what really bothered me when they destroyed. Knocked it down, the old Yankee Stadium, and all the history went with it, because to me they should have left at least part of it as some kind of museum to what the heck went on there. And the people that go to Yankee Stadium today, the new fans, they're expected, and David, you talked about it last week, all the music and all the noise and all the stuff that goes on. I mean, to me, that's not what baseball was all about. It's what baseball has become.
Yeah,
when I was just beginning my career, I was assigned to the World Series in 1972. I had covered previous World Series, but this was in Oakland, and the scoreboard in Oakland had two hands clapping to tell the fans, now you're supposed to clap. And I thought, this is outrageous, Yeah. I mean,
I saw that in the Astrodome.
It's in every stadium now. It's in every stadium. Yeah. Everything is manufactured by Major League Baseball. They tell the teams what to do. They tell who the music to play. It's all very much homogenized into one.
As much as I dislike the Yankees, and I dislike them a lot, I give them credit for one thing. They've never gone the route of a mascot running around the field. Like the Philly Fanatic in Philadelphia, like Mr.
And they've never sold out the name of the stadium either.
I mean, to me, that is so manufactured foolishness.
Oh, it's awful. They do it in D.C. all the time. It just turns my stomach.
You have the President's race in D.C., right?
Yeah. I could do without that too.
I know. We are a bunch of old codgers. You know that?
Yeah. Today is the 62nd anniversary of the Dodgers' last game at Ebbets Field.
Well, c'est la vie, as I said.
Yeah, I posted that on the Sweet 16 group on Facebook today, and got a lot of responses, even from old Giant fans. Said we missed them also.
I've got another question, and maybe you guys can answer it because I do not know the answer at all. How has Major League Baseball attendance been this year? Does anybody have any numbers? I know supposedly the All-Star Game telecast was way down, the ratings were way down, but if you listen to Major League Baseball, they say, that's a huge, fan base, huge numbers, the greatest in the history. On a per game basis, on a per team basis, I have no idea. I don't follow it.
George, I can tell you a couple of things. The Florida teams don't draw. The Miami, somebody put a picture up of their stadium on Facebook. I put down plenty of good seats available. and nobody shows up for their games because the team is terrible, and there's better things to do down there. Tampa is much better, and the Pirates.
They want to move Tampa to Montreal, don't they?
Yeah, and the Pirates, they had games where they drew under 10,000. A lot of them because a lot of the fans were boycotting the team because of the management. The stadium is great, PNC. It's a beautiful ballpark.
Oh, it's a beautiful stadium.
They don't have the problem is that they don't have anything to put in there.
Right.
You got to have a product.
Yeah, exactly. But I think the attendance overall is down. There are some places like Fenway Park and the Yankee Stadium and St. Louis and the Dodger Stadium, Houston now because they're good where they sell out every game. But a lot of these teams have trouble drawing fans.
Right. Well, I'm just curious because of the fact that, Major League Baseball has expanded so dramatically that, and now we're talking about standings. Some clubs, like the Pirates and the Orioles, they're out of it so early and they're so far behind that, I'm sure the fans are, they might be watching television, but they're sure as heck not following the team and going to the ballpark to spend $500 a game on tickets and concessions and all that other parking, all that other kind of stuff.
Well, the Detroit Tigers are an example. That it's a new ballpark. The team has a lot of loyal fans. Right now, they're 46 and 109. This is the worst in the major leagues, obviously. And the Yankees just finished the series out there. I think it was the week before last, and like 2/3 of the fans there were Yankee fans. There were hardly any Tiger fans there. Now it's a very, very good baseball town, but you can't put out a product like that. I expect people to go.
So what's the solution?
Well, in an earlier time, when there was some, the pennant races and what Hal and we're all talking about, you have 8 teams and, the winner. For me, when I was a kid in 1945 was an example when the Tigers beat Washington on a grand slam home run by Hank Greenberg,
right.
On the last day of the regular season. And the fact is that fans were coming out in both Washington and Detroit, and whenever the Yankees were in town, they would draw well. And earlier era, they would draw, to see Ruth and Gehrig and Dickey and all the great players. So, I just don't, because I don't follow the game the way I used to, I don't know whether fans actually come out to see certain players appear and perform in the stadium. Does anybody have hard evidence? I would think that Ruth and Gehrig and DiMaggio and Mantle and Berra and Greenberg and Fox and all those great superstar players, fans would come out to watch them play, whether or not it was the home team or the away team. They wanted to see those great players.
You're 100% right, George. I told my son, and I think I mentioned this last week, I told my son I feel badly for you because I grew up during in what I consider to be the golden age of baseball, in the 40s and the 50s and the 60s, and you had some fabulous players. Willie Mays, nobody could play the game better than Willie Mays. Roberto Clemente, nobody had a better arm than Roberto Clemente. Hank Aaron hit all those home runs. Stan Musial hit as many home runs, he had the same number of hits on the road as he had at home. That's remarkable. Those players, they're one of a kind. Sandy Koufax, Bob Gibson, on and on and on. And now, if I happen to make the mistake of turning on a Met game because I'm looking for punishment, there are players I never heard of, and I probably will never hear of them again. The Mets got beat the other night by some guy named Colin. I never heard of him. Where are these people coming from, And it's frustrating to me because when I was a kid, I knew every player on every team, and I knew the lineups for every team.
You can't do that now. It's impossible.
It's impossible.
Yeah.
It's impossible.
You have a team like the A's. You see them maybe twice a year when they come in to play the Yankees.
That's the problem.
Once a year,
right,
but they come in to play. And the A's are a very good team, but outside of 2 or 3 names, you don't know who the hell these guys are.
Exactly. And the Twins. The Twins hit a ton of home runs. I had no idea. And
I
was
hadn't either.
Amazing. And guys I never heard of hit 20, 30, 40 home runs. It's remarkable.
Also, the Padres fired their manager this past weekend. They didn't even let him finish the season. Named Andy Green. I have no idea who he was.
And he's been the manager for a few years, too.
4 years, yeah.
Well, I remember Andy Green because I think he was an infielder, and he came up for a cup of coffee with the Yankees one year when I was covering baseball. And so I think it's the same guy. I could be wrong. But, another thing, they come up with managers from left field, a really obscure. Who was the manager of the Cincinnati Reds before David Bell? I never heard of that guy. Brian something or other?
Price, yeah.
Yeah, who's the manager of the Braves? Bobby Cox is no longer the manager of the Braves.
No, his name is Snicker, I think.
I know. Who was he? Who is he?
Yeah, I don't know who he is. And the guy who manages the Cardinals, named Schilt, I have no idea who he is.
That's another one.
Yeah.
What happened to Mike Metheny? Metheny, is
they
that
fired him, not this year, but they fired him in 2018.
There you go. See?
Yeah.
Well, I guess we're all showing our age because I don't know any of these guys either, and I have a hard time following them. And I'm with you guys, because the rosters are so big, and the fact is that the teams are what is it, 32 teams now in the major leagues. 30. Okay.
Yeah.
It'll be 32 when
we were kids growing up, and we knew everybody because there were 16 teams. Period. That was it. And you had 25 players on the roster, so you had I think it was called the Games 400. You had 400 major league ball players back then.
But keep in mind that the 2 leagues were completely separate, and so you knew most of the players on your 8 teams in the league that your team was in. Unless you were living in the New York area, which had 3 teams, and then you had enough variety there to know most of the ball players on all 3 teams. But today with 4 divisions, 2 leagues, 3 divisions, and I don't know how many. You're right. I mean, the team might come in once every 4 years, 3-4 years, for a couple of games.
I'll tell you.
That David and Alan and Hal, plus the fact that we talked about this last week. With free agency, back in that earlier era, the players were associated with the teams because unless they were traded, basically they were with that team for their whole career.
Right.
So DiMaggio was always a Yankee, and Mantle was always a Yankee, and Berra and Stan Musial was always a Cardinal, and Roberto Clemente was always a Pittsburgh Pirate. I mean, these were guys and Drysdale and Koufax. I mean, they were the Dodger mainstays, and all those great Dodgers teams and Giants teams and Yankees teams from the 40s. You knew the players, whether you were a National Leaguer or an American Leaguer, but those players were associated with those teams, period. Now, I mean, I can't follow them because if it's free agency or whatever, they might be with one team this year and with somebody else the next year. As Alan used to call them, rent-a-player.
Yeah. And basically, if they go to 32, what they will do is make, like football, make 8 4-team divisions.
Oh, God.
And then you're going to have teams with losing records getting into the postseason. No, they will have 4 8 teams. No, they're going to make. They would make 8 4.
You're right, because they don't want teams finishing in 8th place.
That's right. Yeah, exactly. And that will make it even worse than it is now.
Yes, it would. Absolutely. Just terrible.
Well, as we approach the postseason, we've all thrown a wet rag on baseball. It's supposed to be the most exciting time of the year, and we found too many flaws in baseball. The four of us.
Well, we all love the game. We love the game the way it was, and it is hard to follow the game. You know, I've mentioned before, I have a difficult time, you know, watching a major league ball game when the players are up there and they're either going to hit one out or they're going to strike out.
That's
just
another thing.
Don't
That's another part of it.
I just don't understand the way the game's played today. I don't like it.
And the shift. Don't forget the shift.
Right.
And there was another one of these crazy statistics popped up. It must have been this afternoon because I was watching some of that the Nats-Phillies game, and there was some kind of, it looked like a bar chart across the bottom of the screen that was measuring the speed or something of ground balls hit. And the little arrow would move across, like like some car radios where it was just a straight line strip with all the stations, and it would move. That's what this was looking like. And I said, "Oh, please, not another." It's bad enough we have the launch angle, and now we're going to have to worry about how fast the ground ball is going. It was terrible.
Well, you got to get with it, David. You got to get modern. You got to get with the new age.
I'll tell you something though that I did like about the game this afternoon. There were a couple of sacrifice bunts that really worked.
Oh my God! Sacrifice bunts?
Yes.
Is that right, David? That's amazing.
Yeah. Well, they did have to stop the game and let the PA announcer explain what a sacrifice bunt was.
That's great.
But yeah, I was pleased to see, and of course the announcers were very happy too. They're old-time ball player kind of guys.
Yeah, it's funny because Sports Illustrated used to have the sign of the apocalypse in every issue. They stopped that, but the sign of the apocalypse of baseball is when they start asking trivia questions about launch angle and exit velocity.
Well, I hope they never asked me because I wouldn't have a clue how to answer that.
Would you? What I know is the ball got hit and it went in the seats, and this was a home run. You know.
That's right. Yep, I'm with you.
Anyway.
David, good topic tonight. By the way, we sort of got off on a lot of different tangents, but
no, that's okay.
We all love this game, and we remember the way it was when we were growing up, and how great a game it was, and today the players are definitely more. I think they're more skilled and they're bigger, faster, stronger, but the strategy is different. The game is played differently, and I'm an old guy, and I remember the way it used to be, but, we sort of all love the history of the game, and we love to talk about it, and probably we're talking, we're preaching to the choir because we're all here with that kind of love of baseball, and the new generation, they don't probably know what we're even talking about.
Listening.
They're too busy taking selfies.
Yeah, right.
Very good, Alan.
That's good, Alan. Very good.
Thank you.
Okay, guys, I guess that's about it. We've sort of run out of steam a bit. Next week we can talk about why baseball autographs don't look like baseball autographs anymore.
Oh, geez.
All right.
There's a great topic. Wonderful.
Yeah. Fine with me.
Okay.
Well,
okay.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Good night.
Yep.
Good night.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
The proceeding has been a comfortably zoned network production. You are advised to keep your dreams wet, your humor dry, your children and grandchildren out of military recruiting offices and off the laps of clerics who wear dresses. Thank you for listening, everyone. Happy trails.